Okay, you're watching this video. That means you have a question about armor, gear, enchantments, faction bonuses, everything like that. I'm going to be running you guys through everything that I can for Rush Royale. I've been looking on YouTube, and I constantly see a lot of new players asking the importance of gear, certain upgrades, and I think honestly it's one of the most lacked on things in the game, and it's probably the most important thing in the game as well. So, what's up everybody? I have a face cam on for videos. I know it's kind of weird. A lot of people don't have it, but I feel like it's a better way to connect to you guys. So I'm going to be going through my tier list on types of armor, weapons, amulets, the faction bonuses you could possibly get, and enchantments. I'm going to have all of them timestamped down below. You guys can just skip to whatever part you need. If you guys are new, drop a like. Everybody should be new. It's a brand new channel. So armor is by far, I'd say armor and gear are by far the most important things in the game. You could have the best deck, you could have all your talents set up, you could have the best support units, heroes, whatever, but if you don't have gear, it can completely ruin you in the mid to late game. This is what I suggest as a new player. Know what type of armor you're making and don't upgrade or scrap anything until you know what you want. First things first, you really want to focus on what kind of deck you're building. If it's like a Kingdom of Light faction, or if it's like something meta like Riding Hood or Genie, you really want to know what deck you need to build your gear around, because it's really important for the roles you're going to get. Let's just start with what gear does what. You have 4 types of chess pieces, and chess pieces are really important for affecting you and the enemy on the other side of the board. So there's going to be Hunter's Jacket, which is my personal favorite, and I think it's by far the best, so that's why I'm saying it first. Hunter Jacket puts up to 4 tiles onto your board that increases your speed. I'm going to show you what I have for mine. It boosts 12% for all my units, and then another 13% for Kingdom of Light units because I have the effect bonus. So when I put a unit on that tile, it's upping its speed by 25%, which could be huge for certain units. Mage Robes is going to be second. It is getting a nerf in the next update. Today is March 2nd. So there should be an update coming soon where it's going to be less effective. But basically, Mage Robes affect the amount of mana that your enemy gets per kill, which is huge. It could slow down the progression. It is very good for events. It is very good for the early game. And since it's getting a nerf, it's not really super crazy in the late game, but it could be important for playing against like a Genie, because Genie really needs mana. Next one that I'm going to bring up are the 2, I think, lower tiers. Honestly, I think they kind of suck. Chainmail and Knight's Armor. So Chainmail, basically, if you have the chess piece on, it affects the DPS of the units on the other board, and then you could stack it with like factions. So there could be like Kingdom of Light does 25% less damage, which isn't huge, it's not crazy. And then Knight's Armor affects the critical damage against bosses. Like I said, if I'm going up against anybody in PvP and I see that they have like a legendary Knight's Armor or they have a legendary Chainmail, I kind of just laugh it off. They're not affecting my speed, they're not affecting my mana. It's something that I really don't have to worry about. Oh, I goofed. So for Hunter's Jacket, excuse me, it is not affecting your speed, it's affecting your enemy's speed. I'm one taking this whole thing. I apologize. First video on the channel, but your Hunter's Jacket affects the enemy's speed. It's going to affect it as a whole. It's not going to affect your units. That's what the weapon is for. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Somebody's going to put in the comments, and you know, they're not going to watch the video. But so for armor, a Hunter's Jacket, Mage Robes, and then the Chainmail and the chest piece. If you have the chest pieces like Knight's Armor and a Chainmail, I suggest getting rid of it. It is up to you. You can do whatever you want. I am just trying to help you for the later game. Speed and mana affecting your opponent is the top 2 things. For most units rely on speed. Like you can completely destroy an Inquisitor deck by having Hunter's Jacket plus Kingdom of Light faction. It'll completely destroy their deck. Next thing I'm going to go into with you guys is the weapons. Weapons are huge. It can affect your unit's speed, damage, crit, everything. I'm going to go through which one I think the best is, how can it affect your units, and yeah, we'll just get right into it. There are 4 types of weapons. There's the bow, which does critical damage. It helps your units do critical damage. The sword, which helps your units do base damage. The spear, which gives you increased speed for your units. And then what's the last one? The wand, which gives you more mana per kill, like 10%, 20%, 30% per kill, which is massive. I think the wand is the most underrated weapon. I'm going to be building one for my genie deck because in the late game it is just huge. But the top tier of the list for sure, most people use spear. Spear increasing the speed of all your units is insane. 23% and then another 25% for Kingdom of Light. You mix that together, you're almost at 50% speed. That's massive. It's level 17. It's massive, but it's so good. You don't really see people use the bow. It is very like a niche market. And then sword is rare as well. And then you rarely see people use the wand. But I do suggest if you are going to make a weapon, wand, spear. You can't go wrong with some weapons, but I feel like the most important 2 pieces of gear is your chest piece and your amulets. By the way, if you guys have any questions, put it in the comments. I'm more than happy to read the comments and respond to them. I'm running like 2 other YouTube channels. More than happy to respond on this one as well. I'm always active. Third piece of gear that most people are going to have or want is the amulet. I'm not going to really go into the special items. That's just a whole other video that I'm going to get into. But amulets. There are 3 types of amulets that I know of. I went through so many spreadsheets and lists and stuff, and I could only find 3. If there's a 4th, excuse me, but there is Amulet of Growth, Magic Amulet, and Amulet of Weakness. I have the Magic Amulet, which I kind of goofed. I thought it was really good early on in the game, and I got an effect bonus, and now I'm like, okay, I want the Amulet of Growth. But the amulets are huge for affecting your board as well. They help you with damage. For 2 of them, they help you for damage, and then the 3rd one affects the enemy's board. So let's get into it. Amulet of Growth, probably the number 1, top. It just requires you to build a little bit on the board, but later in the game, as you progress further and further, or even in co-op, it's really, really good. When you merge 2 units onto a tile that it gives you, it'll give you 1 to start. Once you get to legendary, it'll get you to 4. But once you merge these units onto the green sword that is placed on your board, it will up your damage by percentage, and it'll show you how much it stacks, and it'll just keep going and going and going. You can get massive DPS stacks. I highly suggest it. If you're in the early to mid game, getting the Magic Amulet is still huge. It gives you a tile bonus, so it'll give you a red sword on your board that if you put the unit in that square, it will give you a flat damage bonus, which mine is almost 50%, which is still huge. But the Amulet of Growth can continue to stack well past that, which I think is more beneficial. But for the early to mid players, Magic Amulet is huge. It's great. And then the 3rd one, which some more toxic players use, is the Amulet of Weakness. It allows you to have up to 4 tiles on your enemy's board that will weaken, slow your opponent, which is fine. There are toxic players in the game who like using Shaman and Witch and Amulet of Weakness, and that's just how it is. If you like the Amulet of Weakness, kudos to you. I think it's more beneficial to buff my board than to debuff somebody else. Nothing wrong with that. We are also going to get into the faction bonuses and how they could be important, and then enchantments as well. So, as you can see on my gear, every single time I have this effect bonus, and it gives me a 10% Kingdom of Light bonus. So what that means, my original deck is a Inquisitor, which is Kingdom of Light. If I am playing on my board, and let's just say my spear, right? It has 25% Kingdom of Light bonus instead of the Alliance of Kingdoms, which has a 23% bonus. So my spear gives me 10% more speed, or 10% more effect bonus for that faction. So instead of getting 23, it should be 23 for Kingdom of Light as well. But because all 3 of my gear pieces are all Kingdom of Light in the very first slot, you can see in the first slot for every single one, that it is Kingdom of Light. then it'll give me an effect bonus for all pieces of gear for Kingdom of Light. So I get, instead of 23, I get 25% bonus for damage. It affects the speed of Kingdom of Light units on the opposition's board, and it gives me more speed on my units. I wouldn't say that that's something necessarily important to do. You can go for it. I went for it, and looking back, I really went through so many pieces of gear, and I think that it is better to build multiple different pieces of gear in multiple factions than necessarily building one faction and then getting the 10% bonus. At the end of the day, it's really not that big of a deal. Don't think it's vital. You can be on the leaderboards, the top of the game, you could be destroying people, and you necessarily do not need the faction bonus. Just a recommendation. I'm also going to recommend for a lot of the new players, if you get stuff like, if you're going through and you have your disassembly page looks like this, where you just have a bunch of random stuff, don't get rid of stuff. Hold on to it, especially like the blues and the purples that you might get for free. They may be beneficial for later. You might want to change your deck. Some card might come out and the faction is really good, and you're like, oh, I already have a piece of gear, and it saves you in the long run, I promise you. The only thing I get rid of normally are like bows, the chainmail, the knight's armor. I always get rid of those because I don't want to use those. But it is vital that you just save it. I know it could be tempting sometimes where you're like, oh, I'm 200 frags away from upgrading, but in the long run, I promise you it is worth it to upgrade eventually and build multiple pieces of gear. It's not always viable, but it is helpful. Last thing I'm going to talk about is your guys' enchantments. It's so hard doing this in one take, and it's like so much talking, but I know if it helps one person, then I'm going to do it, right? This is why I'm doing this channel, because I feel like there's not enough videos doing this stuff. So, enchantments are huge. You've probably come across a player where they kill the boss, and then they shoot over a curse or something like that, or their units get like a crazy buff. It's because their gear is enchanted. Enchantments are huge. Enchantments are a huge part of the game. Let's go through it. All right. What are good enchantments? What are bad enchantments? How do I get legendary enchantments? All right. Good enchantments. It depends. It depends on your deck. What I normally recommend for most people, Battle Thrill is huge. No, it's not. It's the wrong one. Morally Gray is huge. Normally, you want to go for the epic or the legendary enchantments. You want to try to get rolls on these enchantments while they are lower. Legendary ones are really hard to get on legendary gear. So if you were trying to upgrade a blue weapon or a purple weapon that you like, I would do it there. It is a lot cheaper to do as well, and the percentages are a lot better. But Counterspell is really good. It helps you cleanse. If you have like a bad effect on one of your units, it helps your unit get cleansed. Pocket Curse is probably one of the best ones, and the people who do not have it hate people who do have it. I got really lucky. I think I rolled like twice and got it on my spear. But it is complete RNG. You can re-roll your gear over and over and over, and you have no luck. It's just luck. That's all it is. You just need to keep going, and eventually you're going to get something that you like. Enchantments can change the game for some people. It is not absolutely game-breaking. It is not absolutely necessary. It is just helpful for your deck and possibly ruining somebody else's deck. I recommend, for most people, upgrade your gear. Know what you're upgrading. Make multiple pieces of that gear. There's no rush to get it to legendary. It's all good. It's a bunch of gold. And, you know, just take your time. Ask questions. I'm more than happy to help whoever has any questions in the comments. If you guys are new to the channel and you made it all the way to the end of the video, if you have any questions, drop it down in the comments. I keep saying that, but, you know, drop a like in the video. Subscribe. I'm going to be making a bunch of tips and tricks videos, helpful things that I've learned throughout the game that I wish I knew at the beginning of the game. There's not a lot of YouTube content creators that are going through and just making content where it's just tips and tricks. It's stuff that helps the players save time, save money. And that's, I think, the goal of this channel. If it helps one person, that's all that matters. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm out. See you in the next video.